It's that time of the year when the United Nations hosts its favorite annual farce. Officially, it's called the UN Climate Change Conference. The Gulf Oil Kingdom of UAE is hosting this year's climate summit. Organizers decided to hide the drama behind a serious sounding name, COP28. But the fingerprints of a farce are all over it. Thank you for tuning in. This is Nadeem. You're watching Empire Diaries. Today we will look at how the world's corporate bigshots have hijacked the climate conference near Dubai and turned it into a mockery. What is the UN Climate Summit all about? It's a conference where administrators, activists, and weather experts meet. They are supposed to discuss ways to tackle climate change. In practice, the summit has morphed into a big bad party involving 84,000 self-important people.
Welcome to Cities Day here at COP28.
Expo City Dubai being the proud host.
Let us peel the layers of this expensive farce one by one. By the end of this report, you will be convinced that a small bunch of powerful men in suits have turned this precious event into a circus, and you will be angered at the monumental waste of taxpayer money. Let's first look at the venue where COP28 is taking place. It's hilarious why the UN decided to host it in a completely artificial township near Dubai. The venue is called Expo City, a cheap imitation of a typically flashy Western city. Now, why on earth should a summit about the climate, nature and environment take place at a venue disconnected from nature? Expo City was fancifully designed by an American company called HOK. If you look at the visuals, you will instantly notice that it's anti-nature and so artificial. It's a cheap copy of a Hollywood film setting. The fake venue is a misfit for a summit about saving the planet. That was the first joke about the circus. Next, why UAE of all places? What has the United Arab Emirates done to deserve it? The country is the 6th biggest crude oil exporter in the world. The UN says fossil fuel is the biggest culprit behind climate change. If that is the case, then why host an anti-emission conference in the middle of UAE? Isn't it one of the leading suppliers of fossil fuel? If climate talks are held in oil kingdoms, then the International Criminal Court should relocate to where the Italian mafia operates, and Amnesty International should move to Guantanamo Bay. The UAE joke is not over, it has just started. When the UN was planning to host a summit in the Gulf, people thought it will be headed by someone with a clean and green CV. But who is heading the COP28 presidency? Sultan Al Jaber, the head of Abu Dhabi's national oil company, ADNOC. So the head of a major crude oil company, a company that directly contributes to climate change, according to the UN, is heading the UN climate talks. Isn't that a joke? This takes us to a bigger question. Why is the UN hosting the event physically? Why not simply host it online? The whole subject is all about lowering CO2 emissions and cutting down on transport, right? Then why not set an example by hosting it as webinars? There will be no high-cost travel and no CO2 emissions. Many complex jobs are nowadays done online. Even signatures for deals and pledges can be done digitally. We all do it often. 84,000 self-important people around the world are extremely worried about emissions. So to discuss the problem, they traveled by plane and by car all the way to Dubai. Imagine the huge carbon footprint they themselves are leaving behind. And we are talking about people campaigning against emissions. It's an epic joke. Now if the UN hosts the tamasha online, it will defeat the whole purpose. What's that purpose? To have a grand paid vacation in the desert oasis with lavish arrangements, all paid for by taxpayer money. It's too tempting for them to avoid a physical party. Look at the people who took the long flight to Dubai just to deliver non-technical lectures. One of them is Hillary Clinton. Why should Hillary Clinton attend the climate summit? She is not a weather expert. She is also not an energy expert. She is a warmongering diplomat who famously said on TV that she enjoyed the unlawful killing of Gaddafi in Libya.
Yes, we came, we saw, he died. Did it have anything to do with your visit? No. Oh.
Why is the UN allowing a warmonger to lecture the world on conserving energy? Her presence at COP28 is an insult to taxpayers around the world. Then there's Rishi Sunak. His activities at COP28 are a joke bigger than the summit itself. Sunak spent more time traveling to and from Dubai than he did at the summit itself. He spent 14 hours flying from London to Dubai and back, and he spent only 11 hours at the summit. Only a climate change violator would do that, isn't it? We are not done with Sunak yet. 3 people from the rainy island of Britain attended the summit. The British PM, King Charles and Foreign Secretary David Cameron. Guess what? All three travelled from London to Dubai on separate flights. They could have easily travelled together to send a message to the people about cutting CO2 emissions. It's not a huge sacrifice. A plane won't get crammed if 3 people board it. But fact is stranger than fiction. One aircraft proved too small for all 3 of them, so they took separate flights to Dubai. And remember, they were travelling to lecture the world about cutting CO2 emissions. At the summit, Charles delivered a Churchillian speech about doomsday coming due to climate change. Well, some parts of the world witnessed doomsday long back, thanks to the Buckingham family. Here's another farce, a cruel one. A horrific war is raging in Gaza. Body bags are piling up. There's no peace in sight. But presidents of the Palestinian Authority and Israel are not there. Instead, they're busy attending the climate party near Dubai. Mahmoud Abbas and Isaac Herzog are more interested in talking about weather patterns under the Dubai night sky than stopping the war at home. What's the press doing about all this? Well, they are waiting for press releases to showcase their gold standard journalism. Talented Mr. Bill Gates also didn't miss the party. How could he miss this one? He went there openly to sign a major business deal. TerraPower, a nuclear reactor company started by Bill Gates, has signed up with ENEC, the state-owned nuclear company of UAE. The business plan is to build advanced nuclear reactors in the oil country. For people around the world, it's a summit where world leaders are supposed to chalk out climate action. But Bill Gates landed there with other plans. How to help his nuclear company cut business deals. Of course, he didn't spare the opportunity to deliver a lecture. It was hilarious as usual. He said farming is causing CO2 emissions. Therefore, something needs to be done to farming. He also said climate change will give us more and more infectious diseases. Yes, he actually said that. We didn't crack that joke. He did.
And of course, the agriculture sector is also a source of emissions. Climate change is a major threat to human welfare, but so are food insecurity, malnutrition, and infectious disease. And each of these is very connected to the other.
Who else is there at the Expo City? The heads of the IMF and World Bank. These are 2 financial octopuses that help powerful Western countries control economically weak nations. Basically, they are the 2 biggest offices of economic hitmen. Why should the IMF and the World Bank attend the UN Climate Summit? It's clear that the 2 superbanks want to influence the decisions that are taken there. Who else was there? Tedros Adhanom, who achieved rockstar status since 2020. Tedros heads the World Health Organization. Now we all know that the WHO receives funding from places like Seattle-based Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Geneva-based Gavi Vaccine Alliance, New York-based Rockefeller Foundation, and Illinois-based Rotary Club. So it's a body that is answerable to not just donor governments, but to corporate players as well. Some of the biggest banks in West Asia and around the world are also part of the summit. Bank of America, HSBC, Abu Dhabi Islamic Bank, Dubai Islamic Bank, Abu Dhabi Commercial Bank. What are they doing at the UN climate talks? Big banks are owned by powerful banking families. Why should they participate in a summit about the future of nature and people? Will they do a fair job? Also, look at the long lineup of MNCs and big brands that are part of the show. Microsoft, Huawei, BMW, Ernst & Young, IBM, Siemens, Power Construction Corporation of China, SAP, Schneider Electric, Financial Times, and numerous universities around the world. These are big businesses. They specialize in conducting big business. Will they really offer humanitarian tips at the summit? Wishful thinking. Also, a record 2,456 representatives from the fossil fuel industry are attending the party. The oil bosses have hijacked the show. It's their baby now. The representatives of the biggest oil and gas companies are bang in the middle of the action. Companies like Total Energies, ENI, BP, EDF, and ExxonMobil, and a few others. The UN has welcomed big oil companies to brainstorm about climate action. That's a farce. Climate change and oil business are poles apart. But at COP28, they're having a lovely ball dance, hand in hand. It wasn't a surprise at all when the COP28 president said fossil fuels shouldn't be phased out. We need them. The mask came off with that single remark. An even more absurd thing about climate talks is that they happen under the watchful eyes of the UN. Can somebody tell us which crisis the UN has solved since it was created after World War II? Nothing. Just count the number of wars and invasions that the United Nations allowed to happen. Vietnam, Somalia, Korea, Iraq, Afghanistan, Yemen, Palestine, Crimea, Ukraine. The list is longer. What else has the UN failed to handle? Migration, xenophobia, terror attacks, mystery diseases, toxic corporate jobs, modern day slavery, unprecedented concentration of wealth in the hands of a few families owning the biggest MNCs. Then G7 countries sucking money out of the poorest 100 countries. Where's the UN while these things are happening? They only issue beautiful press releases written in refined language. This is the track record of the UN. Can we really trust them to find ways to save the planet? No way. They don't have the right CV. You must be wondering, so what if the climate change is a circus? What's the problem? After all, the UN and some big companies are covering the budget, isn't it? Well, that's an optical illusion. It's a grand lie. The expensive party is happening at the expense of the public. The taxpayer is paying for the buffet, the travel, and the 7-star arrangements. How is that possible? Let me explain it to you in a simplified manner. How does the UN get its money? As contributions from governments. How do the governments collect that money? As taxes from the public. So taxpayers around the world are funding the United Nations. That includes taxpayers from the poorest parts of the world, like Africa and South Asia. The UN also gets donations from corporate-style NGOs like Gates Foundation. Whose money is that? It is money that is indirectly mopped up from the public by corporate players through business activities. So once again, it's the public who are funding the UN. We are not talking about a couple of $100 for a late night celebration. We are talking about billions of dollars changing hands. Someone powerful is pledging millions and billions of taxpayer money to someone powerful for some arbitrary cause. Have a look at some of the numbers. More than $83 billion have been committed so far at the summit for various causes. The money will go into projects with fancy names like loss and damage, inclusion, Green Climate Fund, Adaptation Fund, Special Climate Change Fund, Lives and Livelihoods, and so on. The maximum amount has been allotted for something called Climate Finance Fund, amounting to $62 billion. We really don't know how much of that money will reach the poor and how much will end up in the pockets of MNCs posing as taking climate action. Whose money is being tossed around in Dubai? It's your hard-earned money. See, ideally, who should be holding these climate talks? Authentic activists and independent scientists. They should decide what should be done with the billions of dollars of taxpayer money. We know that their actions would be relatively honest and meaningful. But giant corporate bodies and powerful international institutions are running the show, juggling with our money in the name of climate discussions. If you still have doubts that the Dubai dystopia is a circus, just visit the official website of COP28. You'll start laughing. The website has a high carbon version and a low carbon version. What is that? If you visit the website's high carbon version, then it will emit more CO2. And if you click on the low carbon version, the images on the website will disappear. Therefore, it will emit less CO2. Have you heard of something more ridiculous than this? Even kids will laugh at it. The annual UN Climate Summit has become a big show where the wrong people are getting to decide our future. People who are not from among us. People from the ivory tower of power. You can trust the weather, you can trust the climate, you can trust the science, but you just can't trust these people. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget to press the bell icon so that you get notified whenever we publish a report. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Send get updates to 98210-45739 for news and analysis you are not told. Visit our website empirediaries.com for in-depth reports and columns. Stay informed, stay awake, and think critically.